Would you believe me if I told you that there was a king who not only was loved so much by his people that they renamed a kingdom after him, who was so benevolent to the church and kind to everyone that his reputation spread far beyond his kingdom, and who had over 20 children, all of whom became a saint? You wouldn't believe it? Well, neither would I. But then I came across a rather interesting person who I could not share the story of. So sit back, strap in, and brace yourself for a story that borders on legend. Howdy all, and welcome back to another episode of the Sanctified Podcast, the show where we explore the stories of various saints throughout history, learn about what they did, and how we came to recognize them as saints today. When I found today's saint, I thought his story was just too interesting not to share. Plus, his story isn't all beauty and glory. There are some aspects to it that demonstrate that not all saints were perfect people. And I can't just exclude saints like that and only cover ones who are more aligned with the Saintly Behavior Association, because the less, quote, saintly saints are just as much part of history as any other saint is. Plus, everything and everyone has some history that they would like to forget, and we can't just ignore all of that. Without further ado, let's get to it. Today, we're going to explore the story of Saint Brychan, a revered ruler and father of many saints. Brychan was king of Wales in the 5th and maybe early 6th century. I'll attempt to say his full name and some of the other names just once, because I don't want to butcher them repeatedly. He was Brychan ap Anlach of Brychan. Quite a mouthful for me at least. He was born in Ireland in the 5th century and was the son of a prince, Prince Anlach Gordanog mac Cormac, and his wife, Martel Verc Tudrig ap Atypical, who was heiress to the throne of the Welsh kingdom of Garth-Madrún, which was later renamed Brychan, and we'll get to why in a little bit. Now, legends say that his parents met because of an extremely harsh winter in Wales, which caused Martel to go to Ireland. While in Ireland, Anlach fell in love with her and she agreed to get married, but under the condition that they would raise their children back in Wales. Anlach agreed, and that is pretty much the beginning of Brychan's story. It is also proposed that there was an arranged marriage between the royal families, but where's the fun in that story? Because of his Irish origins, it is suggested that Brychan's name was either inspired by, or maybe even originally was, the Irish name Brochan. And his name's roots come from the meaning speckled, so it's actually pretty likely that he had freckles, and not that that's a key point or anything, it's just interesting. It's giving us an insight into what he looked like. As a child, he was educated and almost brought up, because his education started when he was about 7, and he just kind of lived with his teacher for the next few years. And his teacher was a very respected teacher, Brychan, who just so happened to also be blind. After 7 years, so by the time he was around 14, studying under Brychan was asked to hand the man a spear, and supposedly Brychan could predict the boy's future by what he would point at. As he pointed at different things, first a boar, then a deer, Brychan told him what the spear was pointing at. Then he described the scene to the blind man. He told him that the deer stood under a birch tree with a beehive dripping in honey. Apparently, this meant a great future to Brychan, according to Brychan. Unfortunately, that great future would come after some hardship. Brychan was sent by his father as a prisoner to maintain peace between his kingdom and the king of Powys. But during that captivity, Brychan fell in love with the princess, Ban Hadalfed, which was very frowned upon. He was a prisoner, she was a princess. It's sort of a Romeo and Juliet sort of situation, just not really meant to be in those situations. But the two started a relationship, and when Brychan was sent back home, he went with Ban Hadalfed, who was very pregnant at that point. Now, some sources do say that Brychan kidnapped her or was more forceful with Ban Hadalfed. It's actually pretty inconsistent what exactly the situation was. The only consistent part is that it happened while he was a prisoner. Shortly after they arrived back, they had their first child, Synnog, who would go on to become a saint himself. One of St. Synog's most famous relics, Torque, which is a type of bracelet, was a gift from his father Brychan. Synnog was just the first of many, many children, and all of those children would have one very interesting commonality. But first, the next step of Brychan's life. Brychan's father passed away, and Brychan became king over Garth-Madrún. It wasn't long before the prediction from Brychan came true, and Brychan was a very, very benevolent king. He helped the poor as much as he could. He offered fair judgments to anybody that crossed his table, and it really wasn't that long before the kingdom's name changed to Brychan. And that's not because he told them to change it. The people of his kingdom just adored him so much that they changed the name themselves. It's the people that kind of decide the name of a place. If we all agree to start calling New York some other name, like Appleton, then as long as everybody starts doing it, it'll kind of just happen. And you may be thinking that Brychan's early life didn't really seem very Christian, with the way Brychan predicted his future and having a child out of wedlock, but Brychan showcased other values. He became a leading benefactor of the church, supporting its growth as much as possible. He helped the people under his rule, even though he didn't have to go out of his way to do so. I mean, how many kings left a reputation behind of just being selfish and greedy? And he offered fair guidance that benefited as many people as possible. Again, how many kings do you know that actually did that? Brychan would end up marrying 2 other women, Gladys and Prostfertidor, though I couldn't find any records on if his wives died or if he just divorced them or what happened. But we know he married 3 times. He would end up having 24 children with his wives. Well, at least 24 is the most common number. It actually ranges from as few as 12, which is still a lot, to as many as 63. Most, if not all, of his children went on to become recognized as saints themselves, which is just insane. What are the odds of having 24 kids, all of whom became saints? The children traveled throughout Wales, Cornwall, and Ireland, and there are various sources that refer to these children. Though the names don't always add up, there are several that are common and several that are unique to each region, so it's possible that maybe some of the names were grandchildren, or maybe even they were just random people who just wanted to say they were related, and the records just didn't quite get everything correct. Some of his children who became saints include Adwin, Bilo, Synog, who we talked about, his first son, Dogmael, Eluned, Gwenfil, Menafrida, Veep, and Viana, but there are so many more. Maybe I'll list them in a separate video or a short sometime. It's just so many really hard to pronounce names. Just as Brychan was known to be a great king for his people and a supporter of the church, he was known to be a very fierce person against his enemies. One ruler from a nearby kingdom fell in love with one of Brychan's daughters and wanted to marry her. He asked 3 times for her hand in marriage, and 3 times Brychan said no. So the other king kidnapped her, which just infuriated Brychan. Kinda rightfully so. If you're just gonna go kidnap some guy's daughter, he's gonna be mad. So Brychan chased after them and finally caught up. He was determined to kill this guy. But as fate would have it, High King Arthur, yes, that Arthur, would be passing at that same moment and resolve the matter himself. He told Brychan to let his daughter be married to the other guy, and that was that. Another time, a different kingdom raided Brychan to prove a point, because there's this reputation going around that nobody could touch Brychan. Well, after they did it, Brychan got pretty mad and sent his army to the other kingdom and basically destroyed it. He had the hands of the men of that kingdom cut off as punishment for the theft. A common enough punishment back in history, but very brutal nonetheless. When Brychan got old, he recognized that his time as king should end. So he left his kingdom to his son, Ron Tremud ap Brychan, and then left to become a hermit. And the legends say that he lived the rest of his life in solitude on a remote island, Innis Brychan, which is likely present-day Lundy Island. Since he died alone, we don't really know his date of death, though we can conclude it was in the 5th, maybe 6th century, if he lived a long time in isolation. His feast day has been historically held on April 6th, and tradition just kind of solidified its spot on April 6th. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. And I just couldn't not share Brychan's story. It's a pretty cool story, but it also shows that not all saints were these incredibly benevolent, perfect people in every regard. They had their positives, they had their negatives, so it's just a common misconception that a saint lived a perfectly perfect life. But nonetheless, what do you think of Saint Brychan? Do you think he would have been a good king to live under? I hope you found his story interesting, and I look forward to learning your thoughts on Saint Brychan. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to support the channel, you can subscribe, download the episode, like, comment, share with your friends, or send me a suggestion on a saint to check out by emailing me at sanctifiedpodcast@proton.me. You can find the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Podbean, and more. I upload once a week, every Thursday. Take care, and have a wonderful day.